Hey folks, Barry here. This is where I work. This is the Market Frankfurt L, or the M4, or the L. It's in Philly. Runs from West Philly to Northeast Philly. My official title is First Class Rail Vehicle General Mechanic in the electromagnetic mechanic field. So, it's First Class RVGM for short. Basically what that means is I am a glorified grease monkey. I change brake pads and check the wheel gauges and the wheel sizes and troubleshoot the electrical components at times, like I am right now, trying to figure out what's going on with this communication problem. Okay. Who keeps dropping the screwdriver? So some of you may be asking, why should I care? Well, you shouldn't. Watch yours. Pull! 8 house, pull! Recently, people have been asking me, do I still play train games, even though I work on trains? And the answer to that is sort of. I only have one train game. This is a little different than playing a train game. So I made the opening of this to say, yes, I do still play train games, even though I work on them every night, most nights. Now, today's game isn't necessarily a train game. It's more like General Me. Now, the other reason is a little backed up on time, so I'm actually doing this while I'm working. Save a little time there for the intro. Now tonight we are going to be doing the expansion to Ticket to Ride, the Switzerland map. Why? Because I think it's a better two-player game than the base game. Okay. So without further ado, here's the video. In the box, you will receive a double-sided board. One side depicting India, one side depicting Switzerland. 46 Swiss Chocolate Tour destination tickets, which is used in the Switzerland expansion. 34 of these destination tickets will connect one city to another, while 12 destination tickets will connect either a country to a country or a city to another country. The Ticket to Ride Switzerland rulebook. 58 White Elephant Tour destination tickets, which are used in the India expansion, and the Ticket to Ride India rulebook. Now, being that this is not a standalone expansion, you will need the 45 train cars from one of the base games. In my case, it is from Ticket to Ride America. And you will also need the 110 train cards from one of the base games. Okay folks, to set up Ticket to Ride Switzerland, first thing I'm going to do is place the board out with the Switzerland side facing up. Next we're going to take our destination cards, give them a shuffle, place them face down next to the board somewhere. Next we're going to shuffle our train tickets and place them face down next to the board. Now, since this looks very silly to me, I'm going to use the 1910 expansion train tickets for this run-through. Next, you're going to take 5 of these train ticket cards and place them face up next to the board, next to the draw deck. Now, as in with the base game of Ticket to Ride, if there are 3 locomotive cards here among the 5 face-up cards, you would then discard all of the cards here and draw 5 new ones. Next, each player will receive their 45 train cards and their score marker. Now, out of these 45 train cards, you want to remove 5 and place them back in the box. They will not be used for this game. Then each player wants to place their score token here at the 100 spot. Next, each player is dealt 5 of these destination tickets. Okay, now out of these 5 destination tickets, each player must keep at least 2, but they can keep up to as many as they want. They can keep all 5. It's up to them. Okay, once a player has selected how many cards they do want to keep, unlike in the base game where you discard the unwanted cards, you now remove them from the game completely. So, in theory, you can run out of destination tickets. Okay, next, each player is dealt 4 train cards. Okay, keep them in the hand, secret from the other player. You choose the first player randomly, and you are ready to play Ticket to Ride Switzerland. Okay, folks, here we go. Ticket to Ride Switzerland. Now, before we get started, I want to put a little disclaimer up. I'm American. I will butcher these names. I guarantee it, and I do apologize for that. Okay, I can barely speak English myself. If you ask the English, I don't speak proper English at all. So, I apologize for that in advance. Now, I am not going to really touch on the base game. I will point out some of the differences between this and the base game. If you want to see an explanation of the base game, one good channel to go look at is D-Lo, and I'll leave a link underneath in the description for his channel, so you can watch his little description and overview of the game there. Okay, so this I'm just going to basically focus on the Switzerland expansion. Okay, now the object of Ticket to Ride Switzerland is to get as many victory points as you can at the end of the game. Now, the end of the game is triggered when a player has 2 or less cards in their play area. Okay, when this happens, each player will get 1 more turn, and then whoever has the most victory points will win. Now, there are 2 ways to earn victory points. One way is to complete a route. Okay, now this is done during the game, and a route is when you connect one city to another city. Okay, so here we went from Luzerne to Bern. Okay, we have a 4-car contest here. We would get 7 points. If we look up here on the top left of the board, it'll give us a breakdown of how many points each length of contest is worth. Okay, so we just did a 4-car contest. We would get 7 points. We would then come over here to the edge of the board here, around the outside, the perimeter, and we would take our victory point marker and move it up to the appropriate number victory point spot on that track. Another way to earn victory points at the end of the game is by completing these destination cards. Okay, once the destination cards are completed, they will be placed face down in front of the player and kept secret from everybody else. There are 3 types of destination cards in Switzerland. Okay, first we have city to city cards. Okay, as you can see, they have a line with 2 like crosshairs there going from one city to another city. Okay, at the top of the card, it'll tell you what these 2 cities are. Okay, then on the bottom right of the card, it'll tell you how many victory points that card is worth once it's completed. The next type of destination cards we have is the city to country cards. On these cards, in the middle, we will have the name of the city that you want to connect to the different countries. Now, on either side of that city are arrows pointing to the different countries. And each country has their flag inside of a circle, which also has the number of victory points connecting to that country would be worth. Now, if we look here, there are 4 different countries that you would have to connect to Zurich in this case. Okay, now if we connect to one of these countries, we will just get the victory points for that particular country that we connect to. Okay, now if we connect to more than one of these countries, we will get victory points for the country that has the highest victory point total on it. Okay, so if we went from Zurich to Italy and Austria, okay, we would get 11 points for Italy because that has more victory points than Austria does. What I didn't mention is, if at the end of the game we were unable to connect to any of these destination tickets, if we were unable to accomplish connecting the routes to the destinations on the destination tickets, we would then have to subtract victory points. Okay, now in the case of the city to country cards, we would subtract the country with the lowest amount of victory points on it. Alright. In the case of the city to city cards, we would just simply subtract the victory points listed on the card. Okay, now the final type of destination card are these country cards. Now with the country cards, you want to connect one country to another country listed on the card. So the country that you want to connect to does not have any victory points on the flag of that country. Okay, and then you'll see arrows pointing out to the other three countries. Okay, now these work just like the city to country cards with the victory points. If you connect to one country, you would get that number of victory points for that country. If you connect to more than one country, you would get the highest numbered victory point on the card. If you are unable to connect to the country, you would subtract the lowest amount of victory points on the card. Okay, now as you can see, there's these circles with the city name at the end of each route. Okay, in Switzerland, they look like this with the Switzerland flag there. Okay, when you go into other countries, you will see that country's flag here. Okay, so in this case, we see France with the French flag, Germany with the German flag, Austria with the Austrian flag, and then Italy with the Italian flag. Now there are 9 different types of train cards here. There are locomotive cards, which are a wild card, and then there are 8 different colored car cards. In order to complete routes, you will need to match up train cards that equal to the color of the route on the board that you were trying to connect cities from. Now as you can see, there's different colors in most of the routes. Alright, however, as you can see here, there are some gray routes. These are wild routes, which means you can play any color to connect one city to another city using that route. So for every card you're going to use to claim a route, that will represent one card in that spot. Okay, so now on a player's turn, a player could do one of 3 things. First, a player could take cards. Now they could take either 2 face-up cards or 2 face-down cards blindly from the draw pile, or they could take a combination of 1 on 1. Now, unlike in the base game at Ticket to Ride, where you can only take 1 wild card, the locomotive cards here, rainbow cards, in Ticket to Ride Switzerland, you can take both, up to 2 locomotive cards. And then you would simply replace the empty spot there next to the board with new cards drawn from the face down pile. Okay, now, like in the base game of Ticket to Ride, if there are 3 locomotives face up in this face up section here, then you would discard all 5 of the face up cards and refill the empty spots here with 5 new cards from the draw pile. The second thing a player can do is to complete a route. Okay, now to do this, we would have to play cards on our hand that equal the color of the spaces on the route that we wish to complete. Okay, and we have to have an equal number of cards as there are spaces in the route. Okay, so for here, say the yellow player went to go from Bern to Interlaken. Again, sorry, I'm American. Okay, she would pay with 3 blue cards, because the route is blue, discarding these cards into a discard pile, and then place one car and her colored cards on each space of the route. Okay, then she would see how many points she would get for that contest. In this case, for a 3-card contest, she would get 4 points, and the other player would get 4 points. The cards she played would be discarded into the discard pile. As you can see here, some of these routes have 2 separate routes on them. Okay, they're called double routes. In a 2-player game, only one of these 2 routes can be used. In a 3-player game, you can use both of these routes. Okay, now as you can see here, this double route is gray, which means it is a wild route. Okay, you can use any color you wish to match up with that route in order to claim it. Say the green player wishes to use that route. Okay, he would have to play 4 cards, because that's the length of the route in this case, of any color he wishes to. So he'll play 4 orange cards. We'll place 4 trains on there, 4 cards on there, and then he discards these into the discard pile. Unlike in the base game, when you go to claim a route, you cannot use the locomotive cards, the wild cards. In the Switzerland game, the locomotive cards are only used in tunnels. Now, a tunnel has this black border around it. In order for a person to claim a tunnel, they must have the appropriate number of that colored card in their hand, or they could use wild cards in combination with the color, or they could use simply just wild cards. Okay, so say the green player wants to connect Interlaken here to brick. Okay, there is a tunnel here which needs white cards to use in order to complete the route. Okay, so the green player would lay down the number of cards he wishes to use to try and claim that tunnel out in front of him. Okay, now he does not have to use 2 white ones in this case. He could use a white card and a locomotive card. Or, instead of using any white cards, he could just use 2 locomotive cards. Now, once a player has tried to claim a route, showing the cards that he wishes to use to claim that route, he will then go to the draw pile and draw 3 cards from the top of that pile. If any of these 3 cards is a color that corresponds to the route he is trying to complete, or a locomotive card, he must have an extra card of that color or a locomotive card in order to build that route. Okay, and he must have one of these cards for each of that colored card or locomotive card drawn from the top of the draw pile. Okay, now if the player only used locomotive cards to try and complete that route, he can only use locomotive cards if locomotive cards are drawn from the draw pile. Okay, so in this case, say the player used 2 locomotive cards to complete that route. If a locomotive card is drawn, he must use a locomotive card to complete the route. 1 additional locomotive card. Okay. Now, if he used a white card and a locomotive card to complete that route, he must have either an additional white card or locomotive card to complete the route, because a locomotive card was drawn from the draw deck. If a white card was drawn and he tried to complete the route with a white card, 2 white cards, or a combination of white cards and locomotive, then he can choose to use either a white card or a locomotive card to complete that route. Okay, so for this one, we'll say use the locomotive. Okay, once he is successfully able to complete the route and he paid any additional cards he has to, he would then discard all the cards that he used to pay for the additional cards drawn and the additional cards, along with the cards he used to try and claim the route, and he can place his cards on the route that he tried to claim and get the appropriate victory points. Now, if he was unable to claim the route because of the cards drawn from the draw pile, say he didn't have any additional cards in his hand and he needed to pay an additional card, then the player would simply take the cards that they tried to use to claim the route and place them back in their hand. Okay, now the final action a player can do is to take new destination cards. In order to do this, the player would draw 3 destination cards. Okay, now they must choose one, but they could keep up to all 3 of these cards, or 2 if they wanted to. They would choose which card they wanted to try and complete. They would place that face down in front of them, keeping a secret from everybody else, and then they would remove the rest of the cards from the game. Unlike in the base game, the destination cards are not discarded, they are removed from the game. Okay, this could end up in destination cards running out. Now, once a player has done one of these 3 actions, play moves on to the next player, and the game will continue like that. Okay, now the game will go on like I said, once one player is down to 2 or less trains in their play area. Okay, when this happens, each player will get 1 more turn. Okay, after that happens, players will add up all the points that they earned from the victory points. Okay, or subtract any from any uncompleted routes, destinations, give themselves the appropriate amount of victory points. Okay, they also will see who has the longest continuous route. That player will get 10 more victory points for the Transalpine Express. Okay, they will give themselves 10 victory points. Whoever has the most victory points at the end of the game wins, and that is how you play Ticket to Ride Switzerland.